Hello everyone, welcome to this video. I want to dive deeper into the C#.NET event processing model. In my last video, which on YouTube is 12-4, how to handle button click event in a separate object, I created this little app here. It's got a form called Simple Form, just a window, right, with a button in it, and you click on the button and it writes output to the console. And the code for this consists of two source files. One contains the Simple Form class, and the other contains the main app class. And the main app class contains the main method to get the program to run. Okay, the Simple Form has the button, right? We add it to the window down here in the initialize component method. But it doesn't run, right? So the main app does not have a main the Simple Form class just provides the window, right? But it takes as an argument up here to its constructor, it takes a reference to a main app. And in the body of the initialize component method, we assign to the button click event a button handler or a click, an event handler method, right? Called button1click handler, which is defined in the main app class. Okay, so we have a button in a window which is in a whole separate class. You click on that button and the event handler, which actually responds to that button, is in a different class. Okay, so this doesn't just apply to buttons, it applies to anything that you want, right? So if you have different GUI components, okay, that you need to handle events in, and you don't want to handle them in the window in which they appear, you can pass in a reference to any object. But going even further, you don't have to limit yourself to creating events of your own and defining events that fire, right, on your own, out of your imagination for your program purposes, right? You don't have to limit that to GUI components. GUI components is where we find it most. So having said that, I just wanted to take this opportunity to go deeper into this topic on the C# event handling model. So I'm going to pull up PowerPoint. I got a PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so bear with me here. So C# event processing model, solving the mystery. Okay, so relax, sit back, get some popcorn, right? Hit pause, go grab something to eat, whatever. Come back when you're ready, and let's roll. So in this presentation, I want to give you an introduction to the issues of event handling, and then we're going to go into the C# event processing overview. Okay, and I'm going to relate, objects that we're familiar with these required components for event processing. Okay, and then the role that each component plays and how to create each type of component. So as you know, C# is a modern programming language, okay, has an extensive API, and it's called the .NET framework. And it gets bigger every time they release a new version, right? And it supports event-driven programming. You click on a button, and if you want to respond to that click event, you have to have an event handler. So you can write programs in C# that behave, like you expect Windows programs to behave. And a Windows program, right, is an event-driven application. And one normally thinks of events being generated by GUI components, right? Because that's the most visible piece of an application. You have a window with some menus and buttons and text boxes, but any object can generate an event if it's programmed to do so. So for the most part, you need two logical components in order to implement the event processing model. Okay, you need an event producer or a publisher, and you need an object to subscribe, okay, an event consumer, okay. And each logical component has assigned responsibilities. So let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail, and I have a diagram for you. So we have an object A, we'll call that the event publisher. And we have object B, who's interested in subscribing to the events, of object A. So object A then has to maintain a subscriber list to any object that's interested, in subscribing. And in object B, there'll be event handler code, in the form of a method. Object B subscribes to event or events generated by object A. And object A maintains a list of subscribers for each publishable event. And when an event occurs, notification is sent to all the subscribers on the list for that particular event. And then each subscriber will process the event notification in its event handler code. So let's map object A and object B to some types that we're familiar with. Button. So we're all familiar with button. And in the last video, I created a main app class that contained an event handler, right? So we have button and main app. So the button object, which appeared in another class, has a click event, right? The click event is a delegate type, and we'll get into this in a second, and it has, and the delegate maintains a subscriber list. And in the main app, there was a button click handler. I didn't call it on button click, but let's just say that that's the name of it. So there's an event handler method in the main app class. The main app subscribes to button's click event. And the button maintains a list of subscribers to its click event. And when a click event occurs, when I run my cursor over the button and I click the mouse, then that fires that click event. And then notification is sent to all the subscribers on the list. So the main app then has this event handler method, and it, processes the event, or it responds to the event because the event is calling that method, So these two diagrams hide a lot of detail, How is the subscriber list maintained, really, in the nuts and bolts, right? And how is the event generated? How is notification sent to each subscriber? And what really is an event, right? And you can add custom event processing to your programs, So this presentation will answer these questions, hopefully in a clear manner that you can understand. All right, so there's lots of classes in the API, the .NET API, that generate different types of events. And like I said before, we are most familiar with the GUI related events. Click, mouse in, mouse out, right? Can you think of some other ones? Good job, right? Of course you can, right? It also contains lots of delegates. So how about, can you think of any delegates? Event handler is one. That's called a delegate. And if you want to find the delegates, right, you just go to the system namespace, and there's delegates throughout, and just scroll down the documentation, and it lists events, methods, properties, right, and then you have an event section, you have a delegate section. So let's take a closer look at the C# event processing model, starting with the required components. So to implement custom event processing in your programs, you need to understand how to create the following component types. Delegates. You need to understand how to create a delegate, how to declare it, and what the purpose of a delegate is. You need to create an object that can generate events. So with your delegate types, you create event fields or events. And then you have to create event notifications in those event generating objects. And then you have to have event handling objects. So your event generating objects are your publishers, and your event handling objects are your subscribers. okay? And you have to understand how to create event handling methods. Okay, so the required components continued. You also need to know how to pass information related to the event between the event generating object and the subscriber object. Okay, the event args class can be used as is, or you can subclass it. So in other words, when you create a custom event, right, and you're firing custom events, you may need, not necessarily in all cases, but for the most part, you're going to want to pass critical information that your event processing or your event handling method can then extract, right, and operate on. Okay, so we'll see this in detail as we go forward. So the event args, like for example, if you have the event handler delegate, which is used, right, to respond to your typical like button.click event, right, click events, that kind of thing. Okay, is an event handler is the name of the delegate, and the event handler declares a signature, right, or specifies a signature for a method that has an object as the first argument and the event args as the second. Well, it's this event args that is used to pass information to that event handler method, right, whichever one you create. And the event args simply captures generic information about an object and the event that occurred, but you can use the event args and subclass that and create your own custom event args class, right, to pass information to your event handler. Now let's talk about the delegate. Delegate types, right? They're their own type, is a category of types, right? Delegate types represent references to methods with a specified signature. So there's really two purposes. There's, the term delegate is overloaded. You declare a delegate. And in the example of event handler, the event handler specifies the signature of an event handler method. So if you create a method to handle a click event, it has to have, and I'm going to put my, click on the, if I click, it'll change. So the event handler delegate, right? Let me do this. No, it won't even select. Oh, it's going that way. So let me go back. Okay. I gotta go back. Hang on. I'm going the wrong way. All right, here we go. Okay. Back on track. So the event handler delegate specifies two arguments for the methods that you use, right? So the event handler is a delegate. Now, the other purpose of the delegate, okay, is to maintain, it's an object in and of itself, right? So when you declare an event of a delegate type, the event has a data structure, it's a linked list, right, that will then point to any event handler methods that you've assigned to that event or to respond to that event. So we'll get into that here in more detail in a second. So the delegate types represent references to methods with a specified signature. So the event handler delegate, like I said, represents a method with two parameters, first type being object and the second type event args, and it returns void. Okay, and any method can be used, right? Any method name can be used, so long as its signature matches that expected by the delegate type. All right, but just what is a delegate? A delegate is a reference type object. A delegate extends either one or the other of these types, system.delegate or system multicast delegate. And that depends on whether one or more subscribers are involved. And the good news is you don't have to worry about that. Okay? You do not explicitly extend delegate or multicast delegate. The C# compiler does that for you. Okay? Or the runtime, I should say. The delegate object contains the subscriber list, okay, implemented as a linked list where each node of the list contains a reference to a subscriber's event handler method. And delegates are types just like classes, except you declare them with the delegate keyword and specify the method signatures that they can reference. Now, talking about the publisher. A publisher is any class that can fire an event and send event notifications to interested subscribers. In other words, any class that you can dream up that you need to fire an event can be the publisher. A publisher class contains the following critical elements. Has to have an event field, right? This is what subscribers will subscribe to. It has to have some notification method. In other words, there has to be something in that class that triggers the subscriber notification process when the event occurs. And then you have to have some means of generating the event, right? Some means of generating the event or recognizing that the event in question has occurred. And this usually happens in a method as well. So what's an event? Okay. An event is a field in a class. Events are declared with the event keyword. And events must be a delegate type. So you declare delegate type, and then you use that delegate type to declare an event. Okay, so delegates, remember, are objects that contain a list of references to subscriber methods. And delegates specify the method signature that can respond to that event type. An event field will be null until the first subscriber subscribes to that event. And you'll see what I mean by this here in a second. So now, the event notification method. In addition to an event field, right, in your publisher class, a publisher will have a method whose job it is to start the subscriber notification process when the event in question occurs. An event notification method is just a normal, ordinary method. All right, it usually has a parameter of event args or a user-defined subtype of event args, but it can have any number of and type of parameters you require. All right, so this event notification method is just a method inside of your publisher class that, responds to the event. Not responds to the event, but, starts the event notification process. So now you need a subscriber. Okay, so in my last video, the main app and the button one-click event, right, that method responded to button clicks. But generically speaking, a subscriber is a class that registers its interest in a publisher's event, right? Or it registers, it contains event handler code that then belong to that object, and you register that method as being interested in firing, right? It just so happens that it can be in another object. A subscriber class contains one or more event handler methods, right? Now, an event handler method is an ordinary method that is registered with a publisher's event. And the event handler method signature must match the signature required by the publisher's event delegate type, right? So here's an example. So I'm going to go into, I might just give you the code here. So I'm going to create an example and then actually enter in the code of an example called elapsed minute timer. Okay, no GUI components, right? But there's 5 source files for this example. Delegate.cs, publisher.cs, subscriber.cs, minute event args, okay, .cs, and main app. Okay, so I could just go through this here. What I'd rather do is just enter this stuff in, okay, in Notepad and actually run it and compile it for you. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's bring up Windows 10, and I'm going to create a new folder for the project. I'm going to say custom events, like that. And I'm going to bring up command prompt, and I'm going to change to that directory right away. Okay, custom events. Now I'm going to, I can close that. I'm going to pull up Notepad, and I'm going to save a new file. Save as. Let's go to Desktop, Projects, Custom Events. Now the first class I'm going to create is the delegate. Okay. So let's go back to my presentation here. Let's go up. All right, so I have, well, delegate.cs. I'm going to call this elapsed minute event handler. I'll call it delegate for the source file. Elapsed minute event handler. That's the name of the delegate. All right, so back to Windows 10. Delegate.cs. All right, so not a very long file. Using system. Okay, and I'm going to put it in a namespace. Namespace. Custom events. Event example. I haven't used namespaces yet on these videos, but this would be a good reason to do it. Excuse me. So public delegate. Okay, void. Void elapsed minute event handler. Okay, so this is a delegate type. It's going to take two arguments, object, sender, event args, minute event args. Minute event args, E. Now, minute event args is something we have to create. And this is just declaring the signature of the method, right? Public delegate void elapsed minute event handler. So elapsed minute event handler is our delegate type. And it takes a sender and a minute event args, okay, object. So save that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create this class right here. We're going to create this class minute event args. All right, so new, and then file, save as. Elapsed minute event args.cs. I'm sorry. Yep, args. Elapsed minute event args.cs. Save. All right, so using system. And namespace. Custom event example. Open brace, closing brace. So public class, minute event args. Minute event args. Extends event args. Open brace, closing brace. All right, so what this is going to do is, the whole point of this example is I'm going to have a program that automatically that counts down, or that counts, right? It's just ticking off, right? As time goes by, every time a minute passes, right? And you can totally program this, right? Every time a minute passes, it's going to fire an event. Hey, another minute passed. And then anybody who's interested in those events, right, as they happen, which would be like, oh, another minute passed, I'm interested in keeping track of minutes, it will fire those event handlers, okay? So I'm going to have a date time object as a field here. Okay. Like that. Now, next thing I want to have is a constructor. Public minute event args date time. So I'm going to pass in a date time like that. Open brace, closing brace. Now I'm going to say this dot time. I don't even need to do this. I'm going to say date time equals date time. All right, so I'm just going to assign the field to the parameter to get that to the argument that gets passed in. Assign that to the field, and then I'm going to have a property. I'll move this up here. Property public int minute, and I'm going to return. Okay, it's just going to be read only. Return date time. Hold on, let me get a space between here. Date time dot minute, like that. Okay, so that's my class essentially for my minute event args. It extends public class minute event args extends the system.eventArgs class, has a private field called underscore date time, and then has a public property, returns an int called minute, and all it does is just return the underscore date time object's minute. Okay, and then I have a constructor here that sets that I pass in a date time object too. All right. Now, next class. So we'll need the publisher, okay, a subscriber. I'm going to create the publisher class now. New file, save as publisher. .cs. All right. Arguably, this is probably the most interesting piece of this application. So far we've got the delegate, right? We've got the minute event args, okay? And now we're going to create the publisher class using system, namespace, custom event, example, open brace, closing brace, and it's going to be a long class in namespace. So I'm going to come up here to the top. Now, I have to create an event. So I have a delegate type, okay? I have a delegate type. What's my delegate type name? My delegate type is elapsed minute event handler. That's my delegate type name. So I'm going to create an event or declare an event. So I use it's got to be public, right? If I want to subscribe to it, public. I use the event keyword, elapsed minute event handler, like that. And I'm going to call it minute tick. That's my event. It's the minute tick event. Okay. So I'm going to have, if I'm a subscriber, I'm interested in subscribing to minute tick events. You could name it anything you wanted to. I just named it minute tick event. So I'm going to create a constructor, publisher, no argument. This will be a default constructor. And I think I'll just, in order to trace this code, I'll say console write line. Okay, publisher write line, or console.write line, and I'm just going to say publisher created. Exclamation point. semicolon. All right. Now, okay, so back to what we were talking about in the earlier presentation. Let me save this file. We need a method, right, that fires the event. So the next method, let me just go ahead and put the method in here as a stub. Public void count minutes. Okay, this could even be private. Doesn't really matter. Private. Oh, I better make it public. All right. Count minutes. No arguments. Okay, and then I'm going to have another method that actually fires the events, right? Or that. So one method is actually doing the work that then generates the event, and then the other method has to fire the event or start the event notification process. Okay, so public void. I'm going to call this on minute tick. Okay, and I'm going to pass in minute event args. Okay, E. So this is where my minute event args comes in. Now let's start with the count minutes method. All right, so this will be kind of rudimentary. I'm going to say int current minute equals date time dot now. Okay, date time dot now dot minute. So I'm just going to grab the current minute. All right, and then I'm going to say while true, which is a kind of the cheesy way to just do everything forever or do something forever. Okay, while true, if current minute, right, not equal to date time, let's get that right, date time dot now, okay, dot minute. In other words, if the current minute is not equal to the date time dot now dot minute, that means, hey, the minute has changed, right? I'm not being completely accurate here, right? Because it all depends on what else is running. But everything this time checks, right? It'll say, well, is it a minute changed? Yes, the minute's changed. All right. Alrighty. So if the minute's changed, then if I'm in this if statement, then it has console write line. So I'm going to just print a message out. And I'm going to say, quote, publisher. Okay. So from the publisher, in other words, given an argument here. So from the publisher, comma, then I'm going to say date time dot now dot minute, like that. So we can see what the minute is. And then on minute, now here's what I'm calling the on minute tick. Let me get down here and correct this. I just saw the TICK, on minute tick. So I'm calling on minute tick. Now I'm going to pass in a new minute event args, okay? And as an argument to that, I'm going to say date time dot now. Okay, so I'm passing in this date object to my minute event args, and I'm going to say current minute equals date time dot, let me get this right, date time dot now dot minute. Okay, so just review this little method right here. What we're doing is count the minutes. When I start this, okay, it's going to start counting off. It'll say, all right, the current minute is datetime.now.minute while true. If current minute not equals datetime.now.minute, that means the minute has changed. All right. Now, if it has changed, if it hasn't changed, it just keeps in this while loop. Just keeps on going, right? This while loop just repeats forever. All right. So not very efficient, right? But that's what we're doing for a demo. So let's fill in the blanks, right? Fill in the body of this on minute tick method. Okay, so and here's where we do a check on the minute tick event, right? So if minute tick, now this is the event up here, right? This is what we're talking about. If minute tick, right? If that's not equal to null, that means it exists, right? In other words, somebody has subscribed to it. If it's not equal to null, somebody has subscribed to it. If it's not equal to null, we have a subscriber. And if that's the case, go ahead and fire the event. Minute tick. Pass in the this, because this is the object that's creating it. In other words, this publisher is the one who is firing this event, right? So this and E. Pass in minute event args. Okay, that's it for that, right? That's it for that method. Now, all right, Control save. So we need another file. We need a subscriber. So let's create the subscriber file. So new file, save as, subscriber.cs. All right, this class is not quite as long as the other one. Using system. Start off with a namespace. Custom event, example. Open brace, closing brace. And I can put in namespace down here. All right. So public class subscriber. Subscriber. Open brace, closing brace. So in class, I'll just group all these guys together down here. So I'm in my subscriber class. Now I'm going to create a private field for my publisher. Private publisher. Like that. Now I'm going to create a constructor method for my subscriber. Subscriber. And I'm going to pass in a publisher like that. Let me underscore. I'll just put an underscore there. That way I don't have to do this. Open brace, closing brace. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say underscore publisher equals publisher. Like so. And then I'm going to simply say publisher dot minute tick publisher dot minute tick plus equals, okay, publisher dot minute tick plus equals minute tick handler. Now I haven't created that method yet, but I'm getting ready to do that right now. But before I do that, I'm going to write a message to the console. Console.writeLine. Subscriber created. I like these little trace messages when you're, just starting out, so you can see the code execute a little bit more dynamically than if you didn't put them in there. All right, so now all I need is a minute tick handler method, right? So public void. So this is going to be in the same format as the minute tick, or the elapsed minute event handler delegate, right? Elapsed minute event handler delegate, which is just has to have an object and a minute event argument or parameters, right? So this will be minute tick handler, right? Object, sender, and then minute event args e, right? That is the authorized signature for my event handlers for minute tick events. And I'm just going to write another message to the console. Console.writeLine. Okay, what am I going to print? I'm going to say subscriber event handler method. I'm going to say subscribers handler method, so we know where this message is coming from. And then 0 that, okay, comma, and I'm going to just print out e.minute, right? Because that's one of the properties on my minute event args. So I'm going to print out e.minute, and that should do it. All right, so very simply, well, I'm not quite, right? I need to get a main method now. So let's go ahead and create a main method, or a main app class. So one more class, new file, save as main app, mainapp.cs. And this is a very short file. So using system, and put it in the same namespace. Custom event example, open brace, closing brace. All right, so public class main app, and the only thing this class has is a main method. That's all it needs for demo purposes. So I'm going to say public static void capital main, right? For all you Java guys and gals out there, that can be maddening when you're first starting out with C#. Alrighty, so I'm going to create a publisher, and I don't really have to do that, right? I can just say, I'm going to do it, but I don't need to do it necessarily on a separate line. Publisher p equals new publisher. Right? Now I'm going to create a subscriber. Subscriber, right? S equals new subscriber. And the subscriber requires a reference to a publisher, all right? Well, at least the way I wrote this program, right? And then I'm going to say p dot. I can make this a lot more responsive if I use threading, multi-threading, but I'm not, right? So I'm just going to say p dot count minutes. Once we go deeper into threading, right, multi-threading with the thread class and using background worker and background threads and stuff like that, you can make this a lot more responsive. But for simplicity, for this particular example, p.count minutes, and it'll just hang, it'll just run, right? It just hangs up the GUI and sits there, and while that while method is running, it just waits until the next minute ticks, and then it fires the event. Okie dokie, that was the main app. All right, p.count minutes, that's a method, so I got to make sure it's a method. Looking at that. Now, by what miracle, well, excuse me. By what miracle, Control Save, will all this compile? Well, let's see here. custom events, CSC star.cs. Let me get my command right, star.cs. All right, so publisher 5, expected class delegate number. I got to go to publisher 5. Let's go to publisher. That's the thing about typing in all the code, right? 5. Oh, public event. Elapsed minute event handler. Hang on. Oh, you know why? I have to say, let's see, I'm all in the namespace, custom event example, elapsed minute event handler. Let's make sure I'm up here. Elapsed minute event handler, delegate void, public class, oops, sorry, publisher. All right. Okay, this is an example of like I labeled this one down here, right? But I didn't label the end of the class. That's why I like to do that, right? So in class, right? I didn't have that in class there. So I need to bring this over. All right, oh, that's fine. See, oh, namespace, custom event. I forgot to declare it public class. The whole thing's missing. How about that? Open brace. Yep. I can see that would be a problem, right? That's what happens when you do this without practice. All right. Well, let's try compiling again, right? We'll see what mysteries await us. Okay. It says publisher does not contain a definition for count minutes. Oh, you know what? I think I probably got to go to my main. That's a capital C. All right, that makes sense. Control. That was an easy one to fix. Let's go back. Current minute does not exist. All right, that's in the publisher. Publisher, current minute. All right, current minute. CURMINUTE, all right, transposition, current minute. You guys probably see these mistakes in the video, right, before I do, because you're not typing and you're not talking. You're looking at what I'm doing and you're like, what's that chucklehead getting ready to do? And I don't blame you for saying that, right? Okay, so it looks like it compiled fine at that point, so clear screen. We'll compile it one more time. You know, the more you do this kind of stuff, right? Mistakes you're going to make especially when you're just starting out. To type in 5 source files, right? Without making any mistakes, you'd have to be pretty good anyway, right? And quite honestly, I'll be honest, you hear these papers shuffling in the background? I had a script, right? But I made some changes to the code on the fly. Because that it had been a while since I'd written this code, and in order to simplify the subscriber method, I changed that, and I made some changes to the publisher code on the fly. Nothing that would affect the way it outputs, right? So, all right, let's clear the screen and run it. So, main app. Now, check your watches. Well, my watch is going to be different from yours, right? But I'm going to hit OK, hit return. And it says publisher created, subscriber created. Now we're going to sit here, and if by some miracle we were close to a minute changing, right, that while method is running in the background. I'm going to move this over a little bit. And it's going to wait if we're close, right? We should see the minute tick over. Now, we don't necessarily have to wait a minute for the first one. There we go. See, it's 39. So on my computer, it's 39. All right. So now we're going to wait a minute. Okay. Or pretty close to a minute. This is not, I would not use this code to run anything that requires 100% accuracy. I'll just say that. But it's ballpark, right? So I've got a publisher. The publisher is going through that method, right? It's running that while loop over and over and over again until that minute changes. And then when that minute changes, boom, it fires that minute tick event. And since I'm a subscriber, I have a subscriber with a event handler method that's interested in that event. It's going to call that event, right? So here's the output. Publisher writes 39. That's in the publisher object. And subscriber's event handler method writes 39. So the next one's going to be 40, right? So as soon as the next minute ticks over, we're going to see 40, right? There's 40. Now we could sit here all day long and just watch the minutes tick by, right? But you get the point. So that is how you create your own custom events, right? And now your imagination's the limit, right? If you need to have, if you want to create your own events and your own objects and have other objects handle those events, or, you could handle them within the same object, right? You don't have to have separate objects handling them. I just think that's an important skill to learn. A lot of my students, when they finally figure out that they can have event handlers in one method, in one class, and, handling events that are generated by objects in another class, the light bulb really comes on with in terms of architecting applications that are a lot easier to maintain, because then you can break dependencies, right? In this case, I'm not using interfaces, so there's interdependencies between some of these classes, like, for example, publisher and subscriber, right? Those guys, if I use one class name in another class, I have a dependency on that name. I can't break it, right? That's a topic for another video in the not too distant future. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions or comments or ideas for other videos, please contact me directly, rick@pulpfreepress.com. And warts and all, that was another video in the tank. I appreciate your attention and enjoy. Happy programming.